Hello, and welcome to Message in the Middle with Marianne. We all know that life is hard, right? It's messy, it's unpredictable, but it can be wonderful all at the same time. My hope is that we can take a deep dive into self-development topics and explore life's lessons through book clubs, conversations, and interviews. And together, we can uncover the lessons that others have already learned to help us navigate this crazy, wonderful ride called life. Hello and welcome to Message in the Middle with Marianne, and today I have Rachel Lavin with me. Rachel began her fitness career in 2000 as an ACE certified group fitness instructor, teaching all kinds of classes like Aqua Aerobics, Bootcamp, Jazzercise, just to name a few. In 2007, she became certified as an ACE personal trainer, working at big box gyms in New York, and then an independent ACE trainer in 2012, and an ACE certified health coach in 2018. On paper, you would never guess that Rachel was like many of us and struggled with her weight and restrictive diets for over 30 years. When Rachel turned 40, though, she had had enough and made a decision to take back her power and heal from decades of negative thinking, self-sabotage, and she began to work on mind, body, and soul. And in 2020, she wrote her first book, The Doughnut Diaries, as a way of sharing her message to all women that they're not alone and to share her 3 pillars of fitness. Rachel, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
So I want to get to your book and why you wanted to share your message in that format. But before we go there, I'd love you to give us a little bit of a foundation in your journey and sort of your experience with the diet cultures and the trying to deal with your weight, and especially from the angle of you working in the fitness industry for all those years. That must have been even more complex. Can you give us a little background on that?
Absolutely. I have been in the fitness industry for over 20 years. And there were times where it was a struggle for me because even though inside I knew that's what I wanted to do, I really couldn't see myself doing anything else. It was still from my peers and my managers. It's like, you don't have the body to be a trainer. You don't look like a trainer. You don't look like this. I need you to do this. So you look like a trainer. I mean, it was just a constant throughout my career of hearing that. And interestingly enough, even though, of course, I thought that about myself, it would just make me so angry because it's like, why can't I just find a place where I knew that I'm good at something and just be allowed to do that? And I think that the fitness industry has come such a long way in that aspect, which I'm so grateful and so happy for, but it hasn't come enough. It hasn't come far enough of the way. But I think that the older we get as women, we just kind of get tired of living in that box. So all of those things combined when I turned 40 for me came to a head. And I just said, you know what? I'm in this industry. I'm here to stay. I am going to step back, figure out who I am, who I really want to be, and do the work. And that's what I did when I turned 40.
And then comes the Doughnut Diaries.
Well, not right away, but yes.
I'm sure it was a process to get your mindset going in the right direction first and then get there. So talk to me a little bit about the 3 pillars, right? You have these 3 pillars. You think they're a prominent framework to work within. Talk to us a little bit about what those look like.
Okay. Well, for me, I have realized that to be my best self and for my body to feel good and for my energy to feel good and to be good, I need to move my body. I need to eat foods that make me happy and make me feel good. And we'll talk about what I mean by make me happy in a minute. And I need to rest my body. If I don't give myself that mental break and that physical break, you're just compounding and nothing ever really lasts. And because I have been in that place for, countless times where, the weight would go and then it would come and then it would go and it would come. And I just have had to learn over the past 11 years what that means for my body. And also too, I would like to say that unfortunately, it's not like, okay, we figure this recipe out and then done. I never have to think about it again. We have to think about our aging bodies. We have to think about, just change in general. And we have to be open to that routine might need a little tweaking here and there.
I think might need a little tweaking, but I also think it's important to say, even though you get the recipe, it doesn't end there because, and some people will disagree with me, but I believe it's something we have to work on. I'm going to say forever, and I know forever is a long time, but for those of us that have been in any kind of that cycle for that many years, I just have not seen anyone be able to just break out of it and say, even if they lose the weight, even if they keep it off 10 years, there's this conscious thing going on to make sure that they stay in those good habits, in that new frame of mind, and keep doing the work, because I think it's still very much work to stay there and not revert back to how we've been programmed for all those years. So I think your point is valid in that we may need to tweak it as we go, but it's not a one and done. You have to keep revisiting it over and over.
That's beautifully said. And I will add on just one thing to that. And the one thing you can kind of settle on and just, if you can wrap your mind around the fact that, like what you said, this is a lifelong journey, and just give into that, as opposed to, I'm going to work out for a short period of time to get ready for this, or I'm going to eat nothing to get ready for this. That is also another reason why we all feel like we're failing, because the weight comes back on, because you're depriving it so drastically. And then when you go back to eating anything other than air, the weight is going to come back on. So if we can just also wrap our minds around that exercise, food, and resting are something we have to do every day, every year for the rest of our lives, then it does become a lot easier when those little changes have to be made.
In your opinion, from your own work and now from talking on this topic with many others, why do you think so many of us struggle to break free of that cycle and to break free of the diet culture and just learning to live in more acceptance of who we are? I'm
going to say something, and this is not to offend any of your listeners, but we have been taught that if we are not thin, we absolutely cannot be happy. And that goes for men and women. And we learn that at a very young age. And we learn that if we look at another woman and if she's in a bigger body, she's miserable, she's unhealthy, she's not attractive, she's not a good person. And that is literally the rest of my life's work, because none of those things are true, nor were they ever true. So unfortunately, we are taught from literally the moment we can hear and observe and digest information that thin equals happy, fat equals all the other bad things I just mentioned. So to break that emotional and mental mold is so hard. It's so hard because you literally have some of the most intelligent, intellectual people who think that way. And so to go across the country telling people, guess what? You don't have to restrictive diet anymore. You can exercise your body every day, and you can take a day off, and you really can kind of eat whatever you want if it makes your body feel good. It does not resonate with people. It just does not resonate.
For me, and I say this, I feel like almost on every podcast now, no matter who I'm talking to, it seems applicable, but maybe it's because we're this midlife stage. It's an unlearning process, right? And I think the unlearning is probably in a lot of ways more difficult than learning, because a lot of that programming that you talk about happened subtly, and we didn't even notice it was going on from the time we were little kids until we become adults. So I think the unlearning process is a lot more difficult, but people like you getting the message out, this podcast or places like this podcast platforms, because I think the first step is people being aware learning to recognize when they're in those patterns, and then they can start to do the work. But I think awareness has to come first. So yeah, unlearning, valid. It's the messaging that we get. I think you almost don't even realize it's going on a lot of the times. And when you start looking back and kind of picking it apart, it's a little bit shocking sometimes that it was there all along and you just didn't notice.
Well, and it seems normal.
Yeah.
The way that the diet culture feeds us this information is like it's based in fact. And I think that's what makes it so easy to digest. Oh, well, of course, if you eat fat, you're going to get fat. Like, I guess that logically makes sense. But then when you're eating something fat free and you look at the back of and you're reading like 8,000 chemicals and you think that's good for your body. I mean, that's where in our country and maybe other countries, I've never lived in another country, but that's where the disconnect is. What you're telling me makes perfect sense. And I don't really have to think about it. I'll just do it. And then my body responds with all this disease and sickness and all that stuff.
For me, neither extreme works, right? There's a balance. And I think the key is in what you said, it's being in touch with your body and what feels good for your body, because people have different tolerance levels to things. I think if you can get completely off processed food, completely off sugar, and without switching in anything else, well, congratulations to you. If you're somebody that needs a little bit of the artificial here and there to help you get 80% off, well, that might be okay for you and your body. I think everybody just has to make informed decisions and know what works for them and be in touch. I think being in touch, being present, understanding is important. Talk to me a little bit about what feeling whole in your body is, because I know that's part of your messaging.
It is my entire message. I think that women are so disconnected from their bodies because they are fervently looking for that perfect aesthetic. And just literally what we were just talking about being in touch with your body, we don't trust our bodies. We do not trust our bodies that they know what they need at any given moment. And I love to put the correlation with, do you ever have to tell your body when to go to sleep? Do you ever have to tell your body when it needs to go to the bathroom? So why are you thinking you have to tell it when it's hungry? It gives you signs that you're hungry. Your stomach literally makes a sound to remind you, hey, I need something to eat. But we have literally taught ourselves to ignore that. And when, to get in touch with our whole bodies means to trust our body, to be super aware of our own signals and to honor those. Don't ignore, because that's when you get into trouble and your body says, if you're not going to help me, then I got to do what I got to do to figure it out and help myself. Because the only thing your body knows how to do is to keep you alive. So if you ignore your hunger and ignore your hunger, then that is when, you hear all the stories. I'm not losing weight anymore. My body is plateauing. I'm gaining weight. Because your body knows smartly enough that if I don't get any calories, then whatever is left in here, I'm holding on to for dear life. So again, like you said, I'm not here to scare people because that doesn't work either. I'm just here to let you know that you have to rebuild that trust with your body.
I love, love, love the analogy to trusting yourself when it's time to sleep or trusting yourself when you have to go to the bathroom, because you don't even think about those things. Like you said, you just know. You know when you're getting super sleepy. You know when you go to the bathroom. And it's true. If you're in tune, you also know when you're hungry. I would say that the caveat to that, and you hit on it, is sometimes you have to retrain yourself, because we've been on this journey for so long of overeating or indulging that we don't necessarily give ourselves a chance to get hungry and to hear those signals. So you're exactly right. I think part of that is sort of peeling that back and starting to get in touch and recognizing those signals. And I think equally as important to me, and the one I think actually for me comes easier, is recognizing when you're full that natural sigh, that sort of your body just is like, right? And so many of us will still like, let's have a few more bites, or I'm out to eat. I should eat this. We paid for it, whatever, all the things we've all said. But recognizing that, for me, that came a lot easier on my weight loss journey than always waiting for the hunger. Recognizing when I was full came much easier.
Yeah.
But both count.
Well, thank you for addressing that too, because that's anytime I'm dealing with a woman who says that to me, like, oh, how do I know when to stop? And I tell them that exact thing. And it may not be a scientifically proven thing, but I know that when I'm eating and I have to take that first, like, that is a signal that your body's like, okay, I'm cool. I'm great. Because if you have to get to the point where you stand up and like all of a sudden you can't walk because you're so full, like that's on the opposite side of not eating, right? So I totally agree with you. And thank you so much for bringing that up.
It's so interesting how your body knows. If you just listen, your body knows. All right, let's switch gears a little bit. Talk to me about how you advise people to get in touch with their, I'm using air quotes, you guys, enoughness.
I had to this last time just really break it down simply. I think any other time I tried to do some emotional work or implement some changes, I might have been trying to do too much too soon without any tools. So I think that when you really kind of open up your heart and be like, I want to be better, I want this to be different. And you really kind of, and I'm sorry if, some people just don't agree with the universe, but I do. And I think that the universe presents you with things that you need when you ask for it. And when I turned 40 and I had this epiphany that like, I'm done with this. I want to be happy. How do I do this? The right people came in my life, the right situations, the right kind of books and things that I just needed at that time. And I just absorbed it all. And I think that if I were to tell your listeners that this is a journey that started at 40, I'm 51, almost 52 now, and I still need to check in. I still have some things to learn. I will never be done with this part of my life. And I'm okay with that because I only keep getting beautiful experiences and joy and happiness and more freedom when I continue this way. So I would say that to maybe not try to get it all done in one day. It's not going to be a light switch. I'm so sorry. It takes time. It takes some digging deep and really, really wanting to let go of who you think you are versus who you want to be.
That gap is where the resentment comes in, where you think you're supposed to be, the expectations on where you expected to be, that picture you had in your head, either about yourself or a situation versus the reality. So yeah, I think learning to let go of what you thought would be and accept what is, and then work from there, meet yourself where you are, and then go from there. I think that's key. I also want to go back and hit on, because I love to bring this topic up, and you mentioned sort of things coming in from the universe at the right time. And I love to remind people about the reticular activating system, right? So the more you are looking for things, the more you're on a specific topic or you're open to ideas about a certain thing, your brain filter will serve them up to you. They're all around. The example that everybody gives, if you look this up, is around, and this literally happened to me, is around if you're going to buy a new car. You can never have seen a certain car around you. You don't think it exists much. There's one every now and then. And then suddenly you go to the car place and you're looking at a certain kind of car. In my example, it was a Toyota Highlander. And then the next thing you know, you're driving down the street and that's all you see, Toyota Highlanders. They were there all along. They didn't drop from the planet above. You just weren't looking for them. But your brain now has new input that says, let's look for these things. I'm interested in these things. I think it's my journey, and many people that I talk to, it's very similar when you start looking for gratitude in your life. You try to build joy in your life. You try to be more present. All of a sudden the signs are everywhere and you're getting them. It's kind of a neat thing. So I love to remind people of that. The reticular activating system. Amazing. Our brains are pretty amazing.
They're so amazing. In both directions.
Yeah, right. That's valid in both directions. Right. because they create stories, right? I mean, that's one of the biggest challenges I'm sure you've had to deal with. I know many people in my group have had to deal with learning to shut down those limiting beliefs.
Yes.
And retrain your thoughts, rewire your thoughts for different pathways. Did you have a lot of experience with that? Did you have a lot of negative thoughts?
Oh.
Eyeball roll, you guys. Insert eyeball roll.
I mean, it was, not to divert from your question, but again, during that time, like so many beautiful books were coming into my life. And one of them was The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz.
Love it.
And it's one of the things that I will never forget is you treat yourself worse than anyone else will ever treat you.
Yeah.
And I thought about that for a minute and I was like, huh?
True.
But it's so true. And then that's when all the, you're treated the way that you see yourself. And it's like a mirror. And that really opened my eyes to, because, you always kind of go through life when things are happening, like, why are you doing this to me? Why is this happening to me? And you don't think for 1 second that you're creating that pathway. And so when I kind of realized and started to pay attention to the things that I would say about myself or to myself, I was like, whoa, and to rewire or reintroduce kind things. Like I had to start at the most simplest way. And I chose to write down, and we can use the word affirmations, that's fine. But I had to write kind things to myself on Post-its and literally put them everywhere I could, that would stand still in my tiny 400 square foot apartment in New York City, places where I would see them every day. And then I would force myself to say them out loud to really kind of strengthen that new belief system. And of course, you say them for a period of time, and of course you don't believe them. And I tell people all the time, it's not going to be, I say, I am enough. And then guess what? You are enough. No. You have to, that's why I always say you can say it for at least 1 week, 2 to 3 times a day for 1 week straight. And then let's see if it's made an impact. But yeah, it was something I really had to address. I had to make the smallest of changes. And now it's a lot easier, because I will tell you, sometimes those negative thoughts do creep back in, but I have such an arsenal of beautiful things to deal with that now.
Yeah. I mean, that's part of it, right? You train yourself to notice them instead of letting them take over, and then use your tools to get, shut them down, basically shut them down. So beautiful thing. So talk to me a little bit about the book. So the Doughnut Diaries, I know just from when we connected, that was a big accomplishment, big goal for you. So congratulations. But why was it so important to get your message into a book?
My biggest thing that I wanted my readers to take away was you are not alone. I write that many times throughout my book, because I think as women, we feel so alone in this space that we don't get the help we need. We don't realize that, a lot of times it's the way we think about ourselves, and we live this way too long. And so how better to reach people than to write a book? I had no idea how I was going to get my message out there, but in writing the book and now having these opportunities to talk to other amazing women like you, you're helping me do that. So thank you. But yeah, that was like my first step. It's like, okay, let's put my story in a book. But I really wanted my story to be, even though it's categorized in a self-help, I didn't really approach it that way. It's like you and I are having a conversation in my apartment on my sofa, and we're just chatting. And I have heard that it does come across like that. So I'm super happy about that. But that's what I wanted it to be. It's just like a conversation amongst girlfriends.
One that's needed, one that doesn't happen often enough, I think. To your point, I think for many of us, this period of awakening or unlearning, it happens late. It happens for most of us in this sort of middle age range, whatever you define that is, but it's later in life. And so I'm with you. I mean, one of my things is I wish I could get people to wake up earlier, right? Because I feel like there's so much time wasted where we could be more in tune with ourselves and really just give up on all those expectations and all that, shoulda, woulda, coulda, and be much happier and willing and able to just embrace our enoughness.
In doing, the podcasting, I've been talking to some younger women too, who are, waking up a lot earlier. So know that is happening, which is nice.
Yeah, I think the message is getting out. There's so much more dialogue around this. I think when we were coming up, people weren't out there shouting from the rooftops on some of these topics. So I think it's probably our generation that's kind of leading the way in getting some of this messaging out, which is great. It's much needed. So is the message of you're not alone, and a lot of what they're going through is, I want to say common, unfortunately, but is that the biggest message you want folks to take away from your book?
That, and, it's never too late to be happy and to be happy with the body you're in now.
Mm.
I still am in a place where I feel like I might have to over-explain myself a little bit, because I'm not saying I want you to sit in front of, 3 dozen donuts and just go to town. I want you to take care of your body. I want you to treat it the best you can. It's the only one you'll ever have. And that comes from the 3 pillars we talked about. You got to rest, you got to eat, and you got to move. But to punish yourself because you had a donut, that's the disconnect. That's where we got to learn to live with all foods, to learn what works for our bodies, and to have the best experience we can.
I think that's a really important message. I'm glad you circled back to stress that, because it's not an all or nothing, right? That gets in our way all the time. So it's learning what's best for you and recognizing that for the vast majority, it's never going to be this idealistic thing where you only eat salad every single day. And it's also not realistic to think you're going to run 25 miles every day or exercise for 3 hours. That's not real life, right? So learning to live in a real way that still can support a healthy lifestyle and, your mind, body, and soul all feeling well. I think that's the key. I think that's the same message.
Oh, yeah. And when I hear women tell me that that's how they eat, 1 piece of lettuce, no dressing, no this, no that. And they're like, and I love it. And I was like, no, you don't.
Right. Do you really? Forever?
But that's how powerful our minds are. You can, for a short period of time, you can convince yourself that you're super happy like that. And, how do I get in there? That's still what I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah. Well, I think that some of us, listen, we all know there's so much science going on right now and more will be discovered. But I do think we now know it's certainly not just about our eating habits, which some of us grew up with not great ones, and that could be part of it. But there's hereditary and there's, genes in there. There's behavior in there that was instilled upon us when we were younger. There's environment. There's so many things in this equation. So I think it comes easier. I guess that my whole point was I do think it comes easier for some people than others. I just do. Metabolism. There's factors.
Oh, yeah. The truth is naturally thin people who never have to lift a finger, and they'll always be the same weight. Always.
Yes. I'm married to one of them.
Always.
Yes. Yes.
And for us women who that's not our gift, to punish ourselves because that's not the way we were made, that's no way to live either. Yes, we have to work out. Yes, we do have to eat some good food. But we can still be in a body that we're comfortable in and that we're happy with.
Yeah, I like that. And I like you alluded to it earlier in that we also need to get to a place where we're not waiting on the sidelines until we get to that perfect place, right? So go to the beach, wear your bathing suit, go on the ride at the amusement park, play with your kids, your grandkids, whatever it is. But sitting on the sidelines saying, oh, I'm a little too chubby right now and I don't want people to look at me like that. We've all done that in our life, right? Well, not all, but a good chunk of the people listening to this will know that experience, and learning to step away from that is a big deal.
Huge.
Freeing.
Very.
Yeah. So I typically end on a note of asking if there's anything we didn't touch on, or there's any last messaging you want to get out there, anything that we didn't hit.
Well, nothing that we didn't hit, but I would just want to reiterate to your listeners, even if there's one thing that you would like to implement or change, just start small. It doesn't have to be this big thing. Even if it's, I'm going to start eating tomatoes. That's great. Eat tomatoes and see how you feel. And if it doesn't work, then you try the next thing. Not everything is going to be a perfect laid plan the first time, and be open to figuring that out.
I think that's a great message. It's a journey. It's not, like you said, there's not one recipe. Even for ourselves, you got to keep tweaking at it until you get it right. I think that's important. And being open to the process. That's a good suggestion and a good reminder. So we'll put all your links in the show notes so people know how to get in touch with you. And of course, we'll put the link to the book so people know how to grab that. Is there a specific way that is best, that you're most active on any of these social media platforms or your website? What's the preferred?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram and Facebook every single day. And you know what? If you have questions, I don't necessarily mean you want to work with me, but I love talking about this, and I love being able to be a sounding board for women. Even if you just want to have a conversation, reach out. So Rachel Lavin Wellness on social media. And then of course my website is also Rachel Lavin Wellness. And that's how you can find me.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining me today. It's been really great.
I loved it. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
You too. Thank you for listening to this episode of Message in the Middle with Marianne. If you enjoyed the podcast, please take a minute to share it and write a review, as it helps bring new listeners to our audience. If you'd like to keep the conversation going between episodes, please join us at Facebook group Message in the Middle with Marianne.